This is the first video in a series all about raising chicks with a broody hen, so natural chick raising. Today we're going to look at from hatch day through to the first 14 days of your chick's life, so the first 2 weeks. Let's get into it. Today we are kicking off from hatch day. So that occurs 21 days after you have set the eggs under your hen. If you want to check out the whole process of that 21 days that she's sitting, check out my video, How to Hatch Chicks with a Broody Hen. Now, the thing you've got to remember about chicks hatching is that it takes a while. It's not a process that is started and finished in just a few hours. So when I mean hatch day, I don't necessarily mean just day 21. I mean the first 3 days from day 21, because some eggs will hatch faster than others and your hen will sit there waiting for all the chicks to hatch. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be done in just one day. So be patient. I highly recommend that you do not disturb the hen during this process. You can look, you can listen, but don't pick her up off the nest. Don't get involved. Just leave her be to do her thing, because there might be chicks pipping underneath her. There might be chicks have just come out of their shells and are drying underneath her. And if you lift her up and jiggle her around, you could disturb that process and potentially harm the chicks that are maybe a bit weak and floppy while they're just getting their bearings after coming into the world. It is important to remember that the process of hatching can take up to 3 days. Now, one chick isn't going to take 3 days to hatch, but not all chicks are hatching at the same rate. Now, your hen is most likely going to stay on the nest for that 3 days, and the chicks are going to be just fine. They absorb the yolk just before they hatch, and that gives them a little backpack of lunch that will take them through for up to 3 days. So you don't need to worry if you've had a chick hatch out on day 20 or day 21 and the rest of the siblings haven't hatched to day 22 or 23. Don't worry, they will be fine. Whether you provide food and water close to your hen so that the chicks can come out and eat it is really a personal decision. I have done it both ways. Generally, I do provide a small amount of food and water within reach, but mostly that is for my own selfish reasons, because I want to see the chicks popping out to eat the food, but they don't need it. The hen will choose when she's ready to get up off the nest. If she has eggs that haven't hatched, she will probably sit there for up to 3 days hoping that they hatch. And at that point, she should, and in most instances will, hop up with the chicks that she has and essentially be done with the hatching process. She will take the chicks away from the nest and start showing them how to be chickens. If she doesn't do that and do wait the full 3 days, if she doesn't get up with the chicks, then you might need to step in, bring her off the nest, remove any eggs that haven't hatched, and at that point she will get up and not go back with the chicks. So that is natural hen behavior. Don't be too hasty in hurrying her off the nest. Those chicks are going to be fine. Once she's up and off the nest and you have counted your chicks and celebrated, what I do is I come in and I remove any eggs that have been left, or the eggshells. I basically pick up all of the nest bedding and remove it and put in fresh nest bedding, because the hen is most likely going to come back to that spot, and if you have her contained in one area, then she's definitely going to come back to that spot for the chicks to sleep under her at nighttime. In terms of food and water for your chicks, obviously you need to feed them and have fresh water for them. It's really important that you are choosing chick-appropriate dishes for them to get that from. So what I use is a chick size waterer. So this just has 1 liter in it, and I like to put my waterer into a unglazed terracotta plant pot base because it just gives it a bit more stability. If the water spills, it gets caught and doesn't make a soggy mess. So that is my preference. It's very important to make sure that this is sitting on a firm surface. So if where your Broody Hen pen is on uneven ground or soft ground, be very careful that the waterer is on firm ground, even if you need to bring in a plank of wood or something for it to sit on. Because if the mother hen knocks it over, there is a risk that a chick could get stuck under it. Because remember, when you're raising chicks with a broody hen, even though the chicks are not strong and couldn't knock something like this over, the hen can. So do keep that in mind. Think about safety and security for your chicks in terms of things that might topple and cause them hazards in their environment. I also like to use the bases of plant pots as little food dishes for them. And then you can also have food dishes like this feeder. So what is happening in my case at the moment is they're getting their chick starter feed in this as their breakfast in the morning, and then they're eating the rest of their meals through the day off of this little bowl. So what I do for feeding, and feeding your chicks is a very personal decision, but what I do is they get their chick starter in their feeder, and I pop that in the evening after they've gone to bed. So when they wake up in the morning, they can have a snack of that before I let them out to roam around for the day. And after that point, then they are just getting the same food as all the flock, but I've upped the blood and bone meal in it, so I've upped the protein, and I'm also incorporating chick starter into the food that my whole flock is getting, and that way I know they're getting what they need. But most of the time they're spending their day foraging around the yard, finding all sorts of interesting things to eat, and they're a lot less interested in eating the food that I'm providing versus eating what they're finding in the environment. That's the first 3 days covered. Now you've got a choice to make. When are you going to let the mama hen and her chicks out of their contained location? Now, if you haven't hatched them out in a contained coop or pen, then you don't need to worry about this little section because you've already made the choices for yourself about how you're going to do it. But if you have hatched them out into a secure location, they're still in their secure location, you have a choice of whether you're going to leave them in that secure place or if you're going to let them out into the wider environment. I choose to let my mama hen and her chicks out at about day 3, maybe day 4, just depending on the weather and what's going on and if the chicks look strong and healthy. That is a choice that I make. I let them out in the morning. They spend the whole day roaming around the yard, and then mama hen takes them to bed. I shut them in for the nighttime and we rinse and repeat the next day. But there are a lot of factors in making that choice. Letting them out has risk attached, and how much risk depends on your environment and what predators are in your environment, what setup you have. So here, there are not a large number of daytime predators. There are cats, and at the moment I am having a cat issue with the neighbor's cats just coming onto the property and causing issues with the chickens and the chicks. So I've still decided to let the chicks out even though there is a cat predator issue, but I'm okay with that risk. If something happens, it's sort of just the way things go. So far, so good though on that front. I have a huge amount of cover here. So mama hens are going to be looking for good cover. They're going to move the chicks from patches of cover to patches of cover. So trees and bushes and garden beds, things that give them cover from aerial predators. That is hardwired. That's their instinct. So if you have a big open space with with no cover, that's probably not a safe, secure environment for your hen and her babies to be running around in. Whether you let them out of a safe, contained environment also depends on your own personal schedule. Because if you are going to be away from home from early in the morning till late in the evening and you're not available or someone else isn't available to do periodic checks to make sure everything's still going okay, or to keep an ear out in case you hear some sort of kerfuffle happening in the backyard, then that might not be the best idea to let them out. Because I always like to make sure I or someone else is here when I let the chicks out. I sort of let them out under supervision for the first few hours, and then I'm doing relatively regular checks to make sure that they are following their mother, that they're being obedient, that she is doing what she's supposed to do, keeping them together, keeping them safe, that they're following her calls and everything is okay. So you do have to be a bit hands-on for the first few days after you let them out. So if you're not available to be hands-on in that way, then better to keep them in a safe, contained environment where you don't have to worry that any chicks can get out or any predators can get in. And speaking of chicks getting out, that's actually one of the reasons that I do let my chicks out so early, because it's actually really difficult to set up an environment where chicks cannot get out. They're very, very small and they are incredibly good at finding every tiny little gap under the coop to get out of. And once they get out, they're not very good at getting back in. Chicks are fragile at this age. They need their mother to keep them warm. They will regularly go back under her to stay warm and safe. So if they get out and no one is there to notice and put them back in again, they're at a high chance of, unfortunately, dying. So that is something to keep in mind. Make sure that the coop that you have is very chick-proof. And this gets a bit tricky. It's actually quite difficult to create the perfect chicken hen coop because you sort of want to make sure it's secure, but you also want open ground for the hen and the chicks to scratch around in. So I've sort of split the difference with my Broody Hen pen, where the half where they sleep and where they hatch has wire mesh under for the floor, and then the rest is open. But that means that whenever I move it to fresh ground, I have to go around with my hand and lots of little pieces of wood to plug any holes that the uneven ground might create. And if I miss one, those chicks are at risk of getting out away from the protection of their mother. So I do find it actually safer in my context to let them out and let their mother deal with the situations as they arise. She will do a great job of seeing off most predators, but where it becomes an issue is if a chick gets stuck somewhere that it can't get out of. So you want to cruise around your environment and check for hazards. Check for nets or things that could topple over easily, for any open water sources, because chicks can fall in and drown. So you want to do a hazard check. And you want to come and check your chicks relatively frequently for their first few days while they're just learning about this crazy new world they've hatched out into. I like to let my chicks out as soon as I possibly can from their safety and they're up and running and dry and all the rest of it. And I choose to do that because being out roaming around in the backyard with their mum has a lot of positives. They're getting exposed to all sorts of different sights and sounds and textures. They're starting to learn how to be chickens straight away. Their mother is teaching them, and she goes out and she scratches the ground like crazy and finds them. I don't know what they're eating, but they are eating a lot and all the time. Little tiny things that she is finding in the soil for them. And that seems to be really, really important for their health and their growth. So I like to let them out. I like to let them do that. I think that's really important for their development. But these things are all within a risk management sort of mindset. I've accepted the risks. The risks here, while they do exist, are not as high as some other places, and I have an environment that's well set up for this to happen for them. Your situation might be different, so you might choose to keep those chicks contained for a much longer period of time. chicks grow incredibly fast, so enjoy them while they are tiny little fluffy bundles of cuteness. Over this first 2-week period, they're going to start growing their wing feathers. Some might grow them faster than others, and in some breeds, the speed that their feathers come in on their wings is actually an indication on whether they are male or female. But not all breeds, and not in my case where I have a whole mix of genetics going on. But you can look into that, you can do some research. Maybe your breed is one that you can do wingtip-based sexing. So that is just a little tip that you can look into. So they will go from having no mature feathers when they hatch to, by the end of that first 2 weeks, having feathers developing on their wings. And you can start to see colors and patterns coming out on the wings. And it's really cute and fun to look at. You'll also see some comb development happening. When they first hatch, their combs are very small and tiny. By the time you're coming to the end of that 2 weeks, you'll actually be able to start to differentiate different comb types if you have multiple types in your hatch. So in my case, I have chickens that have either single combs or P combs. So I can start to try and play a guessing game as to how many chicks I have with P combs versus how many are going to have straight combs. So that is the first 2 weeks of your chicks' lives. If I want you to take anything away from this video, is that no one way is the way to do this. How you're going to approach this depends entirely on your context, your environment, your schedule. So really think about how this is going to apply to yourself before you get started. And you will learn along the way, but don't just follow what I do, because it might not be right for you in your situation.